here we have a strange one. We have my absolute favorite car. This is the 1973 Austin Allegro 1300 Deluxe. This is a model Corgi Vanguard's car that I have with the registration VRF144L. It didn't come with a box, it didn't come with anything like that, so I didn't pay much for it. It was wrapped up really well when it was sent to me, and I just absolutely love it. And the reason why is my aunt in London owned one of these. I remember going to her house one time, and I remember us going for a drive into Guildford with it. I was about 18 or 19 years old. I was living in London, and no, I was 19. And I went to visit her one time, and we went into Guildford in her car. And for many, many, many years after, I was absolutely convinced that it was the Van den Pla model. But I recently looked through some family photos when I was home, and it wasn't. It was this. It was the bog standard model, but it was an automatic, and I do remember it being extremely comfortable. She kept it garaged, and it looked like new. It looked like this, and it is, wow, just absolutely fantastic. I love it. The memories of that just one day will live with me forever. It was such a beautiful car. It's just fascinated me that how bubbly it was, and sort of like the shape of it, and it seemed like really, really good quality. That's what I remember. The door handles had a really good, satisfying thunk to them when you shut the door, and the door handle seemed really strong. And it was an automatic, and it didn't whine too much for an automatic, but she kept it in pristine condition. It was absolutely beautiful inside and out. Not a spot of rust or fading. It was lovely and shiny. Now, the specific model in this car that I've got here in front of you is pretty much, it's been around many, many different car shows, and if there are any major car people who go to the events and stuff, you may have already seen this particular car there, as it seems to do the tours quite a lot. There are many, many different shows, like I said, on YouTube that talk about this car. So this is just some basic information that I can find about it that I can tell you guys. The Austin Allegro is a small family car that was manufactured by the Austin Morris division of British Leyland from 1973 until 1982. The same vehicle was built in Italy by Innocente between 74 and 75 and sold as the Innocente Regent. The Allegro was designed as a replacement for the Austin 1100 and 1300 models. In total, 642,350 Austin Allegros were produced during its 10-year production life, most of which were sold on the home market, less than a third of 2.1 million 1100 and 1300 sold in the previous 11 years. It was built and sold by British Leyland alongside the hatchback Austin Maxi, launched in 1969, and the 1971 rear-wheel drive Morris Marina. All three were eventually replaced by the Austin Maestro in 1982. British Leyland used a saloon design for the Allegro rather than a hatchback. It was decided that the Austin Maxi should have a hatchback as its unique selling point. The Allegro used front-wheel drive using the familiar A-Series engine with a sump-mounted transmission. The higher specification models used the E-Series engine from the Maxi in 1500cc and 1700cc displacements. The two-box saloon body shell was suspended using the new Hydrogas system, derived from the previous hydroelastic system used on the 1100 and 1300. Stylistically, it went against the sharp-edged styling cues that were becoming fashionable, largely led by Italian designer Giorgetti Chiari, and featured rounded panel work. The original styling proposal by Harris Mann had the same sleek wedge-like shape as the Princess, but because British Leyland management, keen to control costs, wanted to install the existing E-Series engine and bulky heating system from the Marina, it became impossible to incorporate the low bonnet line as envisaged. The body shell began to look more and more bloated and tubby. This was acceptable to BL, however, which according to Jeff Daniels' book British Leyland, The Truth About the Cars, published in 1980, wanted to follow the Citroën approach of combining advanced technology with styling that eschewed mainstream trends in order to create long-lasting, timeless models. Its unfashionable shape was thus not a problem to them. The final car bore little resemblance to man's original concept that had originally been conceived as the 1100-1300 reskin. This, as well as British Leyland's faith in it as a model that would help turn the company around, led it to earning the early nickname of the Flying Pig. Models that were finished in the then fashionable brown colour were given an even ruder nickname. With the Allegro, the makers avoided the full extent of badge engineering that had defined the marketing of its predecessor, which was mostly sold as an Austin, although it was sold under almost all of the brands which were BMC BL owned. But they nevertheless introduced in September 1974 an upmarket Allegro branded as the Vanden Plas 1500 Automatic. This featured a prominent grille at the front and an interior enhanced by a range of modifications designed to attract traditionally inclined customers, including special seats upholstered in real leather with reclining backrests, deep pile carpets, extra sound insulation, a new instrument panel in walnut folding tables for the rear passengers, nylon headlining, and for the luggage a fully trimmed boot. In 1974, a time when the UK starting price for the Austin Allegro was given at £1,159, over £12,000 today, BLMC were quoting at launch a list price of £1,951, today over £22,000 for the Vanden Plas 1500. The Allegro name was not used on this version. Early Allegro models featured a Quartic steering wheel, which was rectangular with rounded sides. This was touted as allowing extra room between the base of the steering wheel and the driver's legs. The Quartic wheel did not take off and was dropped in 1974 when the SS model was replaced by the HL. The VP 1500 was never introduced with one, despite it being featured in the owner's manual. Despite this feature only having appeared on certain models for a limited time, the Allegro has always been associated with the criticism that it had a square steering wheel. It could now be seen as being ahead of its time, as today many cars have a squared off lower section steering wheel and some Formula 1 cars have a square steering wheel. Some other BL cars from this period were fitted with a semi-Quartic steering wheel, such as the Rover SD1. In April 1975, a three-door estate car version was added to the range. Allegros were now coming off the production line with the same conventional steering wheel as the Morris Marina, although the company waited till early June 1975 to announce rather quietly the demise of the Allegro's Quartic steering wheel, presumably to give time for older cars to emerge from the sales and distribution network. Similar to the two-door saloon, the Allegro estate had a coach line and also featured a rear wash wipe. The spare wheel was housed under the rear load floor area. It was only in production for about 100 days before the arrival of the Series 2 model, making the Series 1 Allegro estate rarer than most other models in the range. Launched in time for the London Motor Show in October 1975, the Allegro 2 had the same body shells but featured a new grille, reversing lights on most models, and some interior changes to increase rear seat room. The estate gained a new coach line running over the wing lip and window edges. Changes were also made to the suspension, brake-in, engine mounts and drive shafts. Only weeks before the launch of the Allegro 3, 1979 saw the release of the 1.7-litre Allegro Keep, a two-door style sports car in silver with red and orange hockey stick-shaped cheat lines and alloy wheels manufactured by GKN. The car was unveiled to the press at Sherburn in Elmet in North Yorkshire without the distinctive trim. The Keep was intended to compete with the Golf GT and the Escort RS. By now, the aging Allegro, with its lack of hatchback and dated styling, struggled to compete against these offerings, and sales were poor. The Allegro 3, introduced at the end of 1979, used the A-plus version of the 1-litre A-series engine developed for the forthcoming new Metro. and featured some of the cosmetic alterations in an attempt to keep the momentum going, but by then the Allegro was outdated and was now up against high-tech opposition in the form of the Ford Escort 3 and the Vauxhall Astra Mark I Opel Kadett D, both launched within a year of the Allegro's facelift. The cosmetic alterations were fairly minimal. The Allegro 3 gained a new grille with the revised Leyland badge. It carried the Allegro 3 name, bore a larger bumper and gained additional side indicators. The interior was modernised with new components such as new round 4-spoke steering wheel. By now, however, British Leyland was working on an all-new car to replace the Allegro and Maxi during the early 1980s, the LC10, which would eventually emerge as the Austin Maestro. After 1980, it failed to feature in the top 10 best-selling new cars in Britain, barely a decade since its predecessor had been Britain's most popular new car, though this fall in sales was compensated by the largest sales figures achieved by the smaller Metro, as well as the fact that the slightly larger Triumph Acclaim was among Britain's top-selling cars by 1982. Allegro production, which had lasted for nearly a decade, finally finished in March 1982. Its successor, the Austin Maestro, went into production in November 1982 and was officially launched on the 1st of March 1983. The backlog of unsold Allegro 3 models remained sufficient to stock dealerships into 1983, well after the Maestro had launched. The poor reputation of the car and the inefficient production and management techniques in British Leyland at the time at which it was produced have meant that the Austin Allegro has become associated with waste, inefficiency and poor quality. Quality problems concerning the Allegro led to British Leyland making the training video The Quality Connection, outlining both superficial and dangerous issues that can arise from a lack of care and attention. So there we go, guys. That is my little video on the Austin Allegro. It's a cute little car. I really like it, and hopefully one day I'll get to ride in one again that is in really good condition. But yeah, it's definitely going to be one of my favourite British Leyland cars. I don't know why, it just always has been. I love it. So I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, y'all.